Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models and Memories Weekly, episode 25. That's right, we're at a quarter of 100 of these things. Models and Memories is a show about nothing and it is filmed in front of a live studio audience. And stay tuned all the way till the end to see a montage of painted minis courtesy of the EOB Complete community. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and wargaming experiences from the week, and I end every episode with a story. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 YouTube videos a week and you stream every single night. How? Could you possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, I got more Legion painting done. I painted my last squad of Rebel Troopers. Hopefully, I'm a little sick of these models. I've painted 2 squads, but they painted up nice, they're done, and I am really closing in on 800 points of full army of Star Wars Legion. I got a game in this week, and I lost spectacularly. It wasn't a spectacular loss, but it was a loss. I got tabled. But, it was just a situation where I don't have enough time to give to this game to really learn the rules because I wasn't using any rules interactions, I wasn't using any of the special abilities of my army, I didn't use any of my commander abilities, and I did a poor job of pulling command cards in the command phase. But I'm still having a lot of fun with Star Wars Legion, and I'm really loving painting Star Wars miniatures. Star Wars is one of my all-time favorite things, and it is so much fun to appreciate putting them together for a tabletop war game. Now, part of me feels just a little bit like I'm not getting enough done, but that's completely ridiculous because I'm doing a squad a week basically, which is cranking the painting out. But I would like to have it all completely done so that I could, not only did I have my 800 list, but I also had options to pick from. I also have kind of set myself up a situation where I do want to collect everything for Star Wars Legion, but I have to do the Rebels first because I'm probably the least excited for the Rebels. They're kind of the least fun painting-wise, just people wearing green or brown or gray. But if I get it all done now, it's only smooth sailing because next I'm gonna get to paint the Imperials, probably my favorite, and then after that I have the Clone Troopers and the Battle Droids. So all of those I am incredibly looking forward to, and I like the Rebels. I just don't like them as much as all those other things. So if I hunker down and get it done now, then I just get to eat dessert for the rest of my life by painting all of those things. So very excited for Star Wars Legion. Super, super fun game. It feels really tight when you're playing it. Like it feels like there's not, like you always have options. There's always things you could be doing and you could have done. And it's pretty simple rules wise. And so you're not really worrying too much about, you're worrying about special rules, but really it's all about like what dice you get to roll, what abilities you get to take, and you get to take focus or dodge tokens. Usually you want the focus tokens, they're pretty good. But yeah, I'm having a grand old time with Legion. And with this Legion, I was looking at STLs all week, and it just made me really reevaluate 3D printing. And it has reminded me of the bajillions of comments I've gotten about 3D printing, just 3D printed, you know, stick it to Games Workshop with 3D printing, 3D print this, 3D printing is easy, 3D printing is cheap, 3D printing is blah, 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 blah. And I think, can we stop pretending that 3D printing is like taking over the entire wargaming scene? Because it's really not. It's really not. 3D printing is a niche hobby, and it's a niche hobby within our niche hobby of wargaming. It's not hurting Games Workshop. It's not really the next big thing. It's not replacing normal models. It's not better quality than plastic models. It's better quality than some models, because some models suck. But it's not better than the best models. And before you all get mad at me, let me say the positives of 3D printing. It's amazing. It's super cool. There's tons of incredible artists out there creating amazing STLs. I mean, Cobra Mode's designs, the organic shapes are some of the best things ever made. Like, it is so unbelievably amazing how characterful, how dynamic, how interesting they are. 3D printing is an amazing tool. I have tons of 3D printed bits in my armies that I have bought from Shapeways, people on Etsy, people on eBay, and those are amazing, and I really think that they look sharp on my miniatures. But it's also, it's just another tool. It's not the next big, it is the next big thing, but it's not like It's not like going to dominate as opposed to just buying a miniature. And also, when you tell people just to 3D print stuff, you're not helping anything. If anything, you're driving them away from 3D printing because nobody doesn't know about 3D printing. You're not being like, oh, you could just 3D print that. Oh, what's 3D printing? Never happened. Everybody knows what they are. Everybody knows the brands. You got the Photons, you got the Elgu Marses. Everyone knows about the 3D printing. And everybody has decided if it's something interesting for them and that they want to get into it, or if they don't care. I don't care. I love miniatures, I love buying miniatures, I love painting miniatures, and I love the simplicity of I see a model, I purchase it, and then I have it. I don't want to see a miniature, download the STL, figure out the STL, add supports, fix the supports, generate the supports, make the printer print it, scrape it off of the thingy, put it in the pickle jar, swish it around in the alcohol, cure it, and then look at it for any imperfections, can barely see them because the resin is so shiny, prime it, see some mistakes, file them down. Like 3D printing is an entire nother thing. And I spend almost every second of my life painting miniatures, repairing miniatures, building miniatures, or buying miniatures. If I had to add 3D printing miniatures, that would take up a massive chunk of my life that I could no longer devote to just normal miniatures. So 3D printing is awesome, so shush about it. And I know what all of you are thinking. How on earth is 3D printing not the perfect way to stick to Games Workshop? And I can tell you it's not. They don't care. 3D printing is exactly like recasting. They just deal with it. They know that a certain number of people are gonna recast, they're gonna 3D print, and they're fine with it. Because they can't stop it, but it's not as pervasive as you think. If you have a 3D printer and you're like, yeah, but I 3D printed some Space Marines yesterday, that was you. Most people still went out and bought Space Marines yesterday. And I know you still can't get past the idea that 3D printing is the perfect way to stick it to Games Workshop, but it's not. It really is doing nothing, because you are still, if you are 3D printing Space Marines, you are still contributing to Games Workshop's dominating market share in this hobby. Because the truest way to stick to Games Workshop is to play something else. It is not to pirate, it is not to buy recasts, it is not to 3D print your Space Marines, because you 3D print your Space Marines, and then you play with those 3D printed Space Marines against Bill, who buys his miniatures, and all of a sudden he wants to buy a Riptide so that he can better beat your 3D printed battles, or your 3D printed Space Marines. You just contributed to a Games Workshop sale. You post your super cool 3D printed shoulder pads online, and that makes somebody else think that Space Marines look really cool, and then they buy a box of Space Marines. Or you are in a shop, you're in a friendly local game shop, playing with your fully 3D printed armies, with your fully stolen rules and your off-brand dice, but some little kid sees you taking up space in the shop, and they think that the game you're playing looks really cool, and then they buy a box of orcs. You are still contributing to Games Workshop. As if you're watching Games Workshop videos online, you're contributing to Games Workshop. If you're leaving comments for those videos you're helping Games Workshop. Everything to do with Games Workshop helps Games Workshop, even 3D printing, really especially 3D printing. Tons of people have purchased 3D printers to help their 40K and Age of Sigmar gaming careers. Tons of people have bought these machines so that they can print bits and extra bodies and extra pairs of legs so that they can get more out of their plastic kits. 3D printing is not the thing that Games Workshop has to look out for. It's not sticking it to the man. You're not a rebel without a cause, you just have a 3D printer. And another thing to keep this 3D printed soapbox going is there's this weird thing I see, and I know this is the minority. Most people are having a grand old time hobbying, and they don't comment on every video about how much Games Workshop sucks and how much everything is terrible right now. But it seems like there's like a segment of people who 3D print their Space Marines, and they're just reveling in the love of sticking it to Games Workshop, even though Games Workshop does not care and does not notice. But recently I put out a video where I suggested people play other games, because I think that is the truest way to stick it to Games Workshop, because it's not really sticking it to Games Workshop. It's just changing your habits. When I was playing Star Wars Legion the other day, I was having a grand old time. No thoughts of Games Workshop. I wasn't rolling dice being like, haha, Games Workshop didn't get a penny of the time I spent on these models. The Games Workshop got nothing. I just thought, I'm having a grand old time playing this game. And you know what? I'll have a grand old time playing Age of Sigmar and Kill Team in the future. Just changing your habits a little bit is gonna mean that you have more fun, because being upset and being angry and trying to stick to Games Workshop, I think that those feelings are gonna drag you down into a place of being annoyed, being upset, being angry. But if you just decide, you know what? I don't like Games Workshop, and so but I still enjoy their games, so I'm gonna play 60% Games Workshop games and 40% other people's games. That is a good way to keep having the time of your life, keep enjoying yourself in the hobby, and sticking it to Games Workshop a little bit. If you spread around your entertainment and enjoyments through some other companies, you really will help to move things in the direction you want to see. Because there's nothing any one of us can do to make a Games Workshop crash and burn. And really, I don't think most people would want that. I like Games Workshop games. I like Games Workshop miniatures. Sometimes I don't like them, but sometimes I really like them and I want to buy them. So it's great. But if you're really hell-bent on seeing Games Workshop burn, I feel like that is a completely separate thing from your hobby. Because your hobby is just painting figures, cleaning mold lines, rolling dice, carpooling with your friends to get to the local game store. Like, that is the hobby. And I think that is something separate from just being angry or being annoyed. So, who knows? But that, I don't think 3D print. I think 3D printing is amazing, and I think it's super cool, and it annoys me every time I see someone being like, oh, Games Workshop better look out, because that 3D printing daredevil, oh my goodness, that's gonna sneak right up on them. Nope. 3D printing is still annoying. The models are still fragile, although there's new goo that you can add to your resin to make it a little bit more bendy, but it's still. And what is nice is sometimes, especially if you get if you can really dial in your machines, you can get some really, really nice prints that don't have mold lines. They'll probably have their own problems, but they don't have mold lines, and mold lines suck. Luckily, mold lines are usually a thing. They were a pain in the butt on old Games Workshop models. New Games Workshop models are usually pretty good. The ones that have mold lines, it's like a one scrape and done. Star Wars Legion mold lines are pretty hit or miss. A lot of the new models I've bought from some of the more recent expansions have been pretty darn nice. Some of the old stuff, like these Star Wars Rebels from the original core box, pretty bad. But 3D printing is amazing. I really, really like it, and everybody can shush about it. I don't want to hear about the 3D printing. Games Workshop, if I was Games Workshop, if I could be Games Workshop for a day, I think what would be cool is if maybe they gave out some STLs for like some barrels. And just like, yeah, 3D printing exists. Here's 2 or 3 STLs for some scatter terrain. Have fun, you crazy kooks. But other than that, I don't think they're surprised. I definitely don't think Games Workshop should ever sell STLs, because I think it is ridiculously hard to make money with STLs. I mean, as soon as you put out that STL, and as soon as one person decides to be a dick, 3D printing files are so small, like you can Facebook message people STLs to 3D prints. It is so hard to keep that locked. And you know what? All you people out there, pay good money for STLs. If someone's charging $7, it's because it's worth $7. It is really, really hard to 3D sculpt and to give the sculpts like energy and intent. We've all seen bad miniatures, and I think we've all seen bad 3D sculpted miniatures. You see it a lot on like Tinkercad models or people's first few models, where it's very like action figure, left arm, right arm, rotate up 1 degree, a gun with no details. It takes so much skill to be able to turn your sculpture into a living object. It's so amazing. And even if you feel like, well, this Space Marine isn't really worth $7, just know that your $7 isn't paying for that Space Marine, but it's paying for the artist to keep doing what they do. And maybe that Space Marine isn't the most amazing thing, but maybe the figuring out how to do their helmet is the thing that taught them how to do some model that you're gonna think is amazing in the future. I mean, it all adds up to their own skill and their own ability. And everyone gets so mad at Games Workshop for being so evil and capitalisty, but then you try to shove, capitalism into these little indie developments. Let them breathe, support the artists you like. Pay good, honest money for STLs. You don't have to pay like $100 for an STL, or maybe skip that one and go with maybe one of their cheaper products, but support people who make STLs. And a lot of them do a really smart thing where they have Patreon so that they have money coming in. So even if no one really cares about the skeletons they just released, they have a little bit of a cushion because of their Patreon support. Support small indie artists. Do it. Speaking of small indie artists, we here at Eons of Battle have a Patreon, and if you like us and you like the videos we make, you might consider supporting us there. There you'll get some behind the scenes, voting on what models I paint live on YouTube, some STLs, a live hobby hangout every week, and more. But that is what I worked on this week. I downloaded some STLs, and I worked on my Star Wars Legion. I'm super excited to one day have just a mountain of Star Wars Legion miniatures. I'll have everything ever made. I'll get the STLs from all of the heroes that they didn't end up making for the game. It's gonna be glorious. But this show is called Models and Memories Weekly, and I end every episode with a story. And the story I want to tell this week is... This is Space Hulk, and I'm sure 100% of you guys recognize this box. This is one of Games Workshop's most famous products, and I do not know why they do not bring this back out. They should always sell this. This is the game that got tons and tons and tons of people into wargaming. It's pretty much a board game, but it has elements of tabletop, and so it kind of familiarizes people with the idea of like painting their own models, assembling their own models. The Space Marines in this box came in red plastic, and the Evil Gene Stealers came in purple plastic, and so you didn't necessarily need to paint things, but they let someone go wild on the miniatures that are shown off in the art of this box, because like every single one is painted to a golden demon level, and so I bet tons of people saw those paintings and thought, I need to try to recreate that. I think that this box is amazing. I have gotten to play some of the missions from this game, and I had tons of fun. I don't know if I got all the rules right. We have a battle report on the channel where Nick and I played this game, and I'm sure we got all the rules exactly right. But good old Space Hulk, man versus alien in desperate battle, a game for 2 players ages 12 to adult. This game brings me back. This is not actually the copy from 2014. This was an earlier copy. They've been producing this exact box for a while, but we haven't seen a re-release of this box since 2014. Games Workshop, what are you doing? People want to buy this. People would buy this. I'd probably buy this because I actually have painted up a lot of the Blood Angels Terminators. I cut off all the Blood Angel stuff and I painted them up to be my Black Templar, because when I was a small child I didn't have much money, and so I couldn't buy more Terminators, but I owned this box. So I took the models in here and I kit bashed them into my Black Templar Terminators. But now I really appreciate the aesthetics of Space Hulk, and so I'd probably buy a whole nother box just to have the proper Blood Angels to paint them up to make them look amazing. Another big thing I think about when I look at this box is the Space Hulk video game. I have on Steam, I have the Space Hulk game that is just a port of this board game into a computer game, right down to the art style and the model design. It's all like a 1-for-1 recreation. And that game is pretty fun. I've actually played through almost all of it, and I had a grand old time. It has one major flaw, because it's an identical game, but it has one major flaw in it. There is an undo button, and I understand the logic of the undo button, because the game is kind of janky, and you could totally get yourself into situations where you've spent your activation points wrongly and you really messed up, or you accidentally misclicked and you told a Space Marine to go somewhere that you didn't mean them to go. And so I understand the idea behind the undo button, but I think that the undo button is too tempting, because sometimes you've got tons of action points left and you're gonna take some shots at the Gene Stealers, and you fire, and you fire, and you fire, and you fire, and you miss like 5 times in a row, and you're like, that is impossible. How could I possibly have missed? And so you click undo. It's so tempting. It's so hard not to. I sometimes I would be like, how How could my guy have missed that swing? That's completely improbable. Undo! I'm weak! I was not able to resist, but that button should have been gone. I understand that it would have made the game even more punishing because it's already really hard for the Space Marine player to win on most of the missions for this game. But they should have gotten rid of that undo button, and if you misclick and you send your guy to go to the wrong spot, you just restart. But I haven't gotten to play too much of this game because this really quickly leapfrogged into big 40K and Kill Team. But it is really fun, and it's a really interesting game. I think a lot of the tiles are based off of an earlier edition of this game because the miniatures that they made don't fit very well on the square dungeon crawler tiles, but it is still an amazing product. I mean, look at that box art. That is classy. But this is not the 2014 version of the game. I bought this from a friend of mine in high school. I got a really good deal on this. Unfortunately, he had put together a lot of the Space Marines poorly, and so with Games Workshop plastic glue, so I had to really rip and tear and crack those suckers apart. I think I have all of the Gene Stealers. The Space Marines are in pretty rough shape. This is not really a playable box right now because I haven't painted everything. Everything is not assembled. I think I've misplaced some doors, but it is a really, really fun game. This is a good game to get people into the hobby. So thank goodness Games Workshop has not re-released this thing for years and years and years and years. Hopefully they release it soon. Christmas is right around the corner. Space Hulk, bring out a new edition. Maybe update the Gene Stealers. I know the models in here are classic, but they could do new things with them. They're like beautifully sculpted for like 2011. They could update them again. The sculpts are amazing, but you can totally see a lot of flaws that existed at the time that probably wouldn't exist in more modern sculpts. You see a lot of clipping where Space Marines like arms and armor are moving through other parts of them. You see a lot of like a Space Marine's cape will have like a giant flat section because of the abilities of the two-part mold. You can't have overhangs, so nowadays they would probably just make the cape like into 2 or 3 pieces so they could have everything exactly how they wanted. They could make better miniatures than the awesome miniatures that come in this box, and I think that would also help it sell better. Space Hulk, Games Workshop, bring back Space Hulk. And to the makers of that Space Hulk game, just get rid of the undo button. We don't need it. I know they've made more games that are in the line of Space Hulk. I know there was Deathwing. I think there was another first-person shooter game, and those look kind of cool. My computer can't run them, so. But, good old Space Hulk. That is my memory. Getting this box in high school, cracking it open, seeing all of the miniatures that were poorly put together, putting all the little doors and the little plastic chips, reading all the mission books, and then reading all the different missions. Facing, movement, so many wonderful memories. So little Space Hulk. That is my memory for this week, and it'll bring this episode of Models and Memories to a close, but not really, because now it's time for the real star of the show, this week's EOB Complete submissions. We put out a challenge to our community to send us before and after photos of their recently finished models to be immortalized in our videos. If you want to join in the fun, you can submit a before and after photo of your painted mini to our Discord server, which you can find in the description below, or you can post it to Instagram with the hashtag EOBComplete. Without further ado, let's look at and get inspired by what the folks have finished this week. A Merkna with Belchabana by Jerkshoes, an Age of Sigmar Kragnos by Husley, a Plasma Generator by Tolan Ron, a Warrior Veteran by Disco, a bunch of Deathwatch Veterans by Chukka, some Imperial Guard tanks by Just Make Stuff, some Castellan Robots by Matt, an Old School Homunculus by Save or Die, a Primaris Apothecary by Junkheart, a Necron Satan Shard of the Deceiver by Digidueler, a Primaris Gladiator tank by Book of Love, a Special Orc by Miguel Encino, 24, an Underworld Slanesh Demon by Tom, a Death Corpse of Krieg Ogren by Timo, a Furioso Dreadnought by Platypus Duke, a Sister of Battle Celestian Sacrosaint by Fuzzball, a Tau Battlesuit by Ominous Mecha, a Primaris Captain by Mellow, a Sister of Battle Rhino by by Power, a scratch-built mech by Ender Scaparen, a Primaris Judicar by Not Mike, a Calidus Assassin by Earliest Birch 74, a big ol' Storm Giant by Aldous, an Imperial Guardsman by Mike Crew, a Redemptor Dreadnought by Brother Captain Brutus, a custom Primaris Lieutenant by Tarius, an Adeptus Custodes by the Kurgerbing, a Primaris Company Ancient by Trent, and an old-school Mephiston model by Gremlins Eat 2. Congratulations to everyone for a job well done. It's no small feat to get paint on a mini, and you all should feel really proud. Nothing gets the hobby juices flowing like finishing a project, and we all thank you for sharing your work, motivating us and the hobby community to paint our plastic. Thanks for sharing.